fossils I put along. I thought what I'd start with is a general geological map of the British Isles. And this is, as you can see, it's nicely coloured. And why not? That's the best way to actually see. What we're looking at is the surface geological expression of the rocks. And what I just want to bring your attention to is this lovely yellow and orange bands that run right through the middle of the country. Oxfordshire and Berkshire are somewhere in the middle, sort of down here. But if you follow the trend of these rocks, you'll see that they go down to the south coast of the British Isles. And that's a coast which I'm sure most of you have been to see. That's the Jurassic coast of Dorset. And then if you follow it to the north, you'll come out to the coast of Yorkshire. So that's the dinosaur coast of Yorkshire. So the same rocks are occurring at two ends of the country and also right here in the middle of the Oxfordshire and Berkshire. But those colours aren't just there to make it look pretty. They were actually put there initially by this chap, William Smith, who did the very first geological map of England and Wales. There's a copy of it here. There's a copy in the museum in Oxford as well. And he did this in 1815, and one man did this, whereas when we go back to our BGS map, this was obviously done by thousands of people have contributed to this data. So lots of people have done that. First edition in 1906. One person did that. It's just absolutely incredible. And the reason for mentioning him is because he was born in Oxfordshire, in the village of Churchill, so a local hero. Let's look in a little bit closer at the geology of Oxfordshire, and we've got that stripy pattern that I was talking about, slightly different colours, but essentially what we've got is in the north of the county are our oldest rocks. When you head up towards Banbury, these are the lower Jurassic rocks. And then as we come progressively south towards the Chilterns and then obviously into Berkshire, we're getting to younger and younger rocks, and we're dominated by the chalk. In between, in the middle, is all these Jurassic rocks that we've got, the lovely Cotswold limestones that you're so familiar with when you drive to the west. And what I want to do now is just concentrate on one triple SI. This place here, Wood Eaton, which is just to the east southeast of Oxfordshire, of Oxford. Sorry. So it's a 15.8 acre site, and it was first quarried in 1949. So not a particularly old quarry when you compare with a lot of the other quarries that we've got there around in the county, and notified as a triple SI in 1975. Quarry was reactivated when they were building the M40. You may remember there was lots of lorries going around tipping limestone everywhere so that they could build the road. When quarrying ceased there were issues about the ownership of this particular quarry, and it went to lots of different sort of court appeals and whatever, but there was a restoration plan put in place for it. Here's just an aerial view of the quarry just after it finished work. And you can see the site, actually the quarry extends almost to the very edge of the site. And this caused lots of problems later on for the last, or the current owner of the site, who has been actually landfilling in the, just to sort of explain what sort of geology we've got there and why it was designated. We have a Middle Jurassic Great Oolite series of rocks there from what they call the Tainton limestone, right up through the White limestone member. One of the most important horizons that we find there is the Rutland Hampton-Marley Formation. This is very nice because it contains rootlet beds in it as well. Number of fossils that you can find there: brachiopods, rhynchonellids, and Epithyris and oyster bivalves. There was a Stegosaurus found there, and this actually caused a real problem because the Stegosaurus appeared online for sale on eBay. You could buy bits of it from somewhere in Eastern Europe. And so the British Museum in London, the Natural History Museum, quickly went in and excavated the rest of the skeleton. Unfortunately, it cannot be shown in public because when they excavated it, they didn't know who the owner was. So ownership was not known. So the provenance of it might be known, but because the ownership was not clarified, there's this sort of grey area about whether or not they should technically own it, but they did save it. So it's somewhere in the vaults in the Natural History Museum in London at Cromwell Road. But of course, it did bring to the attention of everyone who actually owned this site. And eventually it was, some quick pictures of what it looked like during the final excavation. Down the bottom here, we've got the rootlet beds. You can see that as it was being landfilled, so it was being, there were geotechnical engineers coming into the site saying, this is safe, this is not safe. What we've got exposed here are the sort of the white limestone cliffs, which should have been left in the restoration. But sadly, they've all had to be covered over with Oxford clay because there was this danger of rockfall. So it couldn't be left, which is a real shame because down the bottom here, we have there's a fault and a slight fold in the rocks there. This, if you like, is the northern sort of expression of the alpine orogeny that we've got. It ripples out. Again, you may have seen some of this in person if you've been down on the south coast to Dorset. You may well have been to Lulworth Cove and Stair Hole and seen some of the Jurassic rocks there, which are almost vertical. So as you come further north, so those ripples get less and less. And one of the last places you could see them, the evidence of this structural sort of episode was actually at Wood Eaton. Sadly, it's all covered over. The restoration plan that had been put up in 2011, final restoration plan, did have rock exposures along here. These are where the photographs were taken. The Hampton Marley bed used to be in that little lake area down the bottom, all covered over now. That's another sort of just a couple of views through the restoration site, which had Michael McKenna, who was the current sort of owner, had been sort of infilling there, and then every 6 months the engineers would come along and say, yeah, that's very good, Mike, but you've got to actually cover this up because there's the danger of rockfall going on there. So sadly, this SSSI has been lost, although Natural England have said, well, actually, technically, it's still there. It's just covered over. So if you want to have a look at it, yes, you can do that. It will cost you God knows how much to get a JCB in and excavate it, and then you can have a look and carry on doing your scientific work. But until then, it's just got to stay covered up. So it's a strange example of how we've sort of lost the SSSI, but essentially not. I don't know. You know, it's a bit disturbing, I find. Anyway, with that, I'm going to say thank you and hand you over to my colleague Lesley, who will now take us further over into Berkshire.
Hello, I'm Lesley Dunlop and I'm representing Berkshire Geoconservation Group. So I just want to say a little bit about the group and what we do. We work with other partners to designate local geological sites, which are on the same parity as local wildlife sites. We also get involved with quite a lot of projects, such as those on building stones, gravels, and we do some condition monitoring and conservation of specific sites, and we organise groups of walks and other talks and things. We've got a very good website, and you can see an image of the front page just on the slide there, and the address of it at the bottom. So if you want to know more information, the best thing to do is look on the website. It's got list of the events, it's got various publications, it's got details about the local geological sites. And I guess one of the message from this slide is just to remind people that natural diversity encompasses both biodiversity and geodiversity. And it's quite important, I think, to always think of those things together, because without a difference of geodiversity, you wouldn't get a range of biodiversity. So as we move on to the second slide here, we've got a geological map of the county of Berkshire, which shows that up in the top western corner around Lambourne and down the Lambourne Valley, we've got bedrock of chalk, equally the same around Maidenhead. And then as you move down to the south, and particularly to the southeast, the bedrock gets younger. We pass into what used to be known as the Redding beds, and now known as the Lambeth group of sands and clays, and that's where the brick making was supported from. And then we move down into the London clay, the sort of flatter area, and then into the bagshot beds, which are quarried and represented in the area down to the southeast of Wokingham and Bracknell. And then, of course, overlain on all this, we've got the river terrace gravels and recent alluvium. So moving on to this slide, which is taken from our website, just wanted to highlight the fact that we've got in Berkshire 8 triple SIs which are designated for geological reasons. So we've got Boxford Chalk Pit, Brimpton Cancourt Farm, Coldash Quarry, Fognham Chalk, spelt that wrong, Hampstead Marshall, Pinsent's Kiln, which is on the outskirts of Reading, and Winterbourne Chalk Pit. So these are specifically designated because they show particular aspects of geology, and that's taken from the Geological Conservation Review, and these are nationally important sites. There are also 26 local geological sites, and again you can find the details of those on the website. There's a little sort of thumbnail bit about each of the sites on the web page. Wanted to just mention national nature reserves because these are particularly important at the moment because of contributing towards the nature recovery programme. And of course in Berkshire we don't have any national nature reserves as such, in comparison to Oxfordshire, which has 4. And that's going to be quite important when we think about how we deal with nature recovery. Moving on to the next slide. And going back to my first slide, that you won't get a change in biodiversity if you haven't got a change in geodiversity. You can get changes due to land use and anthropogenic reasons, but it's quite important to think about what the bedrock and therefore the soil and the landscapes are. And I just put on here a little bit about what the term geodiversity means, because it's not usually sort of up in people's memory quite as much as biodiversity. But unless you've got a change in this, then you won't get a variation. And of course Berkshire is brilliant for it, because we've got the chalk landscapes up on the Berkshire Downs running down into the more acid heathlands down in the south and southeast. And of course geodiversity is subjected to any sort of threat, largely because of anthropogenic activity, so we need to ensure that we're keeping it in the best condition that we can. And I got this information from one of my Natural England colleagues, that if we include geodiversity into nature recovery, then we're going to have a much more integrated, holistic approach. We'll be able to link things better from past, present and future, and we can enhance the biodiversity. So it's good to think about it all as a whole. And I just take us back to our geological map of the county. Without that variation from the green chalk up in the northwest down to the more acid heaths that we pick up at Snellsmore, Greenham Common, and down towards the Bracknell Wokingham area, we wouldn't have that really brilliant range of diversity within the county. So it's exceptionally good for a small county, and that's really what I wanted to say. So please do take a look at the website, and there's an email address on there as well, which will get you through to anybody, and you know, just pop in any questions that you've got, and look forward to hearing from you, and thank you for listening to this.